Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful second Saturday of August here, I guess, which is crazy to say out loud. This month is already flying by. But I think it's going to move just as quickly through the rest of the month as things really heat up in the tropics. In fact, we now have a new invest to watch out for with a high chance of development within the next 7 days, and even the chances of developing within the next 48 hours are increasing. So that'll be the big storyline in today's video. But we also have some interesting weather going on back home. And just kind of a lot to talk about again between the very active scene in the tropics as things continue to get closer towards peak hurricane season and some, cooler, drier fall air working on through the lower 48. It really is starting to feel like fall out there. So kind of exciting times for a lot of us here. Now, if you're new, welcome to the channel. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And welcome. Again, I appreciate you joining me today for the latest forecast. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Also, like the video and comment. Let me know kind of what you're seeing this morning or afternoon whenever you're watching this in your neck of the woods. Also, let me know what kind of hurricane preparations you've done for any new potential storms we have later on this season. I think with all that said, though, let's go ahead and get started this morning because, again, we do have a good bit to talk about. Now, the big storyline is what I'm about to circle for you right here out into the Atlantic. This is our new invest designated by the National Hurricane Center, and you can tell just by looking at it, it's starting to get its act together. Now up to a 30% chance of developing within the next 48 hours and an 80% chance of developing within the next week. So that'll be the big storyline. Other than that, things are relatively quiet. Now, the other big thing you'll notice here right kind of at the top of the screen near my head, and I'll circle it with a different color so you can see it a little bit easier here, but we do have a big-time upper-level low, almost this bowling ball-looking thing on satellite here, just north of the Great Lakes. That is helping to pump in some cooler, drier air down here on the backside into the United States, and a lot of us are going to feel that drier air. Now, not everybody, though, so you'll have to stay tuned to find out who exactly sees it and who doesn't, but that is a big storyline back home. And then the other good news here is that what was Debbie is no longer a problem, and has kind of moved on back out into the open ocean. So good news there as well. All right, so latest on our new invest, let's take a look at it this morning and just kind of see what we're looking at here. Again, a lot of thunderstorm activity. That's one thing you want to look for, tropical development. Also, we're seeing that thunderstorm activity stay persistent, meaning the storm isn't just kind of flaring up and down like we often see with summertime afternoon storms. This one, it is maintaining these showers and storms. Also, we're already seeing some kind of outflow to the storm. If you take a look, it's already almost got that shrimp look to it. And you might be wondering, well, what are you talking about by a shrimp look? Well, let me try to draw this here for you. If I can find a color that'll work. We'll try this color. So this is kind of the head of the shrimp, if you will. And then this is kind of the tail of it. And you kind of see that general shape. That is a sign of a strengthening tropical system. And this one, again, is absolutely doing it. And that's why those chances have increased for development here in the near term and even the long term as well. Also, we are seeing some lightning bolts kind of getting going with some of this thunderstorm activity. Top right there, you can see the flash count. I'll move my head down a little bit more so you can see it. Again, up to, a good 150 or so strikes within this loop here. So again, a sign of a strengthening tropical system, and we'll continue to do so over the next couple of days as we continue our track on through August. Now, ladies from the National Hurricane Center, we've got a big area of red. Again, this storm could develop at any time, but it is very likely it will at least within the next 7 days. Now, where it happens, that's still up for determination here and for your interpretation, I guess. But again, anywhere in this red bubble it could happen, anywhere from right here in the main development region of the Atlantic, or it could wait a little bit longer till it gets towards the Antilles, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola, and even the southern Bahamas there. But either way, we are going to see impacts to land out of the system in these regions from the Bahamas all the way down here through portions of the Caribbean. There will definitely be impacts. Now, United States impacts is another question that will have to be answered on down the road. We'll take a look at some of those forecast models here next. But again, nonetheless, we're going to see rain and some pretty squally conditions through the Antilles, Puerto Rico, and probably Hispaniola as well. Now, exactly how strong the storm is at that point, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see, but we'll definitely take a look at some model guidance here and try to figure that part of the puzzle out. All right, latest European model. This is for Monday afternoon. So again, today is Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. So about 48 hours to kind of 54 hours from now is kind of what we're looking at here. So This is our wave. You'll notice this kind of area of darker blue. We're also seeing kind of this, troughing shape in general, again, indicating that we do have some spin in this system. And again, this is Monday afternoon. Now, by the time we get into Monday evening and Tuesday morning, this system begins to develop into a named system, whether that starts as a tropical depression or goes straight to a tropical storm. Still up for, interpretation. We'll figure it out. But here we go. We begin to close off that low on Tuesday, and we've got a named system moving through the northern Antilles. Now, this time, again, the main impacts would just be some rain, some squally conditions, but nothing really too out of the ordinary for the islands. Now, eventually, the storm's going to get closer to Puerto Rico and likely really begin to strengthen. Now, this storm could be on the north side of Puerto Rico. It could be on the south side of Puerto Rico. That part of the forecast, again, we're just going to have to wait for a defined center to form on that system before we really are able to take a look into that. But again, the storm strengthens here, gets through Puerto Rico, bringing the same impacts, gusty winds, and rainfall. And then the storm really begins to strengthen near the Bahamas by the middle of this coming week. This is Thursday morning. Tropical storm getting closer to hurricane status here on the European. Now, at the same time here, the storm begins to curve north, which is good, but also strengthens pretty big. And we've got a major hurricane about a week or so from now, likely somewhere between the Bahamas or Bermuda in that ballpark. Now, I know this model is very far to the east here towards Bermuda, but if you remember with Debbie, a week out, it looked like Debbie was going to track through the Bahamas and up through the East Coast, and then next thing you know, we had a storm in the Gulf that tracked through Florida. So I don't want you to think that this is figured out or that this puzzle is solved already, because we're quite a ways from it. And again, I think we'll know more once we get that center of low pressure to form. Same problem we had with Debbie. So I think, Monday, Tuesday of this coming week, we'll have a much better idea on whether this is going to go out to sea or not. But absolutely do not just assume the storm is going out to sea. It is way too early to kind of lock that forecast in. But the trends are promising for sure, as the European here, again, then strengthens the storm more. And watch what happens right here at the end of this loop. You'll notice the storm kind of hooking out to sea and then gets a quick nudge right into here back towards the United States. Now, we'll take a look at the steering currents in a second, but that's another part we'll have to watch out for. Even if this storm does curve really soon, there's a chance it could get thrown back towards the United States at least a little bit. Now, not necessarily to say it's going to go all the way into the United States, but we'll need to watch that part of the forecast as well. All right, latest GFS model. We'll move this into the same time. Here we go. GFS, what was I about to say? The GFS forms the storm, a little bit sooner than the European model. Which I think could be onto something here. Again, we looked at satellite. The storm's already really getting its act together. So the GFS is a little quicker here with the formation of the storm. And in fact, it did better with Debbie in that way too. Whenever the storm got into the Gulf, the Euro was, a lot weaker. The GFS got the forecast intensity a lot more correct. So it may be onto something here as well. So if this is right, this will be more impactful for the islands here. We've got a strong, or at least a feisty tropical storm here, moving on through the northern part of the Antilles here. Again, bringing strong straight line winds, some very heavy rainfall as well would be the main concerns here. And eventually, the GFS, again, is much further south than the European and thus stronger as well as it forms that low sooner. So, again, here we go. This is going into next Tuesday and Wednesday, kind of overnight Tuesday and Wednesday. We've got a hurricane, or at least very likely a hurricane, just south of Puerto Rico. So that would put Puerto Rico on the rougher side of the storm. Again, pretty strong winds, some very heavy rainfall rates would be a concern as well out of this, and probably even a little bit of storm surge would try to move on through into some of those low-lying coastal communities. Now, next up, the GFS continues to strengthen the storm and continues on this southerly track, now getting up to a major hurricane, very likely, or at least a strong Category 2 storm, and then makes landfall into the Dominican Republic here, going from Wednesday evening into Thursday as, again, a strong hurricane. So impacts would be plentiful with this. This is when surge would become a bigger deal, winds would become a bigger deal. Then obviously rainfall would continue to be a concern here with this storm system. But then the GFS does begin to hook north, much like the European, but is further towards the west here and brings a powerful storm as well, or at least a feisty hurricane into the southern Bahamas after getting torn up a little bit by Hispaniola. Then continues, just like the European, strengthens this into a major hurricane near the Bahamas or Bermuda, again, where in between there is still up for interpretation, and then moves it northward and kind of back out to sea as, again, a major hurricane. So Those are the two models currently, and again, you're looking at those and thinking, well, that's good. We're out of the woods. We don't have to worry about this when it's going out to sea, at least if you're in the continental United States. Now, the islands, obviously, it's a different story, but even then, not quite. So this is going into Tuesday. These are our ensemble members. Here we go. A storm, again, near the Antilles or near Puerto Rico. This is the European ensembles, I should add, all thrown together as a mean. And look at the setup. So we've got, again, one big area of high pressure, the Bermuda High, if you will, and then we've got another high pressure over the Hudson Bay of Canada, and in between the two, we have this trough. Now, these three pieces of steering currents are going to be the main players in where the storm goes. Now, a couple of things are also going to matter with the storm itself. How far north does it form? Now, if the GFS is a little closer and the storm forms a little bit further south, or if that low pressure forms more like this and then ends up further to the south by the time we get to this point, then we're going to feel less pull from this trough or this break in the ridging up to the north. So if that happens, the storm's more likely to keep pushing west a little bit and then curve north later, and then could be a bigger problem for the United States. Now, if it forms further north here and then it ends up kind of north of the islands, then it's going to feel that trough much quicker. It's going to turn north much quicker and likely wouldn't be as big of a deal for really anybody. But here we go. This is, again, the latest forecasting. We go from Wednesday into Thursday. You'll notice this trough just hangs around so long that the storm is able to get picked up by it. Now, what happens next will also be interesting, though, because then after that, finally, the trough kind of, begins to die off a little bit. And what happens to the north is this big ridge up in the Hudson River Valley, in the Hudson Bay, I should say, kind of pushes, back out into the North Atlantic. And if that were to happen, then the storm would want to kind of, turn back towards the northeast in a sense. Now, again, not to say that that is absolutely what will happen. We're still very far out, and that would be a bit of an anomaly for what normally happens. So generally, you steer away from things that aren't quite normal when the models show them far out. But it is something we're going to need to watch nonetheless, and we'll have our eyes on with those steering currents. Now, the latest here from our ensembles, we'll start with the European ensembles. This is for next Thursday into Friday, that time frame. And you'll notice the European models, we've got a pretty wide spread of possibilities. Low pressure could be anywhere from Cuba towards out to sea. And again, as we saw with Debbie, when we're this far away, we just cannot nail down anything that is solidified. So if we get some of these members that are further out towards Cuba and the Bahamas, then this very much could likely become a United States concern on down the road. If the storm is more out here, then yeah, we're probably going to be safe. But if we move this further ahead into time and we loop these, watch kind of where these tracks go. So again, you'll notice the storms that are out near the Cuba, Bahamas area get much closer to the United States. The storms that are further towards Bermuda, not so much. Now, another thing that you'll notice with some of these storms is watch that kind of snaking pattern here as they kind of curl back towards the United States. Now, not all of them do it, but enough do it that you're going to kind of want to watch it, as that could increase potential impacts towards the northeast should the storm get kind of close to you guys. So, a lot to figure out here with the storm. These are just the European ensemble members. We look at the GFS members and look at all of these. Again, we've got way more on the GFS side that are tilted further towards the west there, which, again, the GFS got it right with Debbie with the same general time frame. So we'll need to watch it. And we will continue to do so. And if we look at the loop here with the same thing with the GFS, you'll notice those members that are a little bit further towards Cuba, get this closer towards the United States. Some of them even try to bring it into the Gulf of Mexico in the long run. So, nothing's set in stone yet. Obviously, we're going to continue to monitor it. Right now, the trends look good. So that is, something that we'll take. But it is way too early to write off future Ernesto here. And just say it's going to be a fish storm. We learned that with plenty of other storms, Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Lee, and plenty others from even further back in the history book that, would say otherwise in terms of these forecasts. So that is something we will continue to do. And also, actually, what I'm going to do very quickly here is look at this further out, because we have these that go out a little bit further. So let's see what happens here. This just ran. So similar thing on the GFS. Again, a couple get this closer to the United States. Most of them curve it out to sea. But again, like I just said, it is too soon to know for sure. All right, switching gears here a little bit. We talked about the tropics. Let's talk about what's going on back home. And again, we've got some active weather this morning, and we'll continue to have that for the next week or so. We've got some storms along the East Coast and in places that really don't need it, specifically out here near North Carolina. into the Sand Hills and into the Fayetteville area. Non-stop rain, it has felt like for the past week, and I'm sure you folks out that way know exactly what I'm talking about. Plenty of rivers, creeks, and streams have come out of their banks in that area, and unfortunately that will continue to be a concern. Now, we do also have a pretty good batch of rain moving through the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma this morning and afternoon, so that is something that we'll be watching for as well. Luckily, it doesn't look like too much of a severe threat with anything on the map right now, just some good old-fashioned late summer rain. All right, so let's talk about the pattern going forward. What's in store for us? Well, again, as I mentioned earlier with satellite imagery, we've got this big upper level low to the north of the United States. By the time we get into tomorrow and Monday, this will eventually slide into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, and with it, we're going to see a pretty good push of dry air on the backside of this into portions of the United States. So that will help a lot, make it feel a little bit more like fall than maybe it's feeling right now. But after that, we look for another ridge to kind of build in over the southern United States, which is going to return that ring of fire-like pattern. Now, I don't think the storms are going to be as severe this time, but we will see some, we will still see some complexes of storms kind of move around this ridge here and bring some impacts. Now, other than that, we also have this trough that, again, is going to help to try to move Ernesto out to sea, kind of hangs around the East Coast for a while. So if that is the case, like some of our models are suggesting, that will help to keep things a little bit cooler into the eastern half of the country, specifically the mid-Atlantic and the northern mid-Atlantic, to be extra specific. So we'll watch out for that. But in the long run, again, this just kind of continues. We see that troughing kind of hold on to the east and ridging build back into the west. So we will see how that influences the forecast. But also this troughing you see is going to be very important for future storms even after Ernesto. Wherever these troughs set up are generally where the storms turn north. So, if we've got one centered right over the eastern United States that isn't offshore, some storms could try to, pull right up into, the eastern half of the country. So we'll need to watch that for sure here in those steering currents on down the pipeline. All right, so a quick look at the next, or really just your weekend forecast in general here, rainfall-wise. Again, we've got some showers and storms this morning. By the time we get into this afternoon, expect more to develop, specifically into the southeast, the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, Florida. Could see some pop-up storms this afternoon. Again, much more summer-like than the storms we've been seeing that were associated with Debbie. Also, some showers and storms here up into the Great Lakes and into parts of Canada are going to work on through. And other than that, also some rain back into Texas and Oklahoma that's left over from this morning from what's currently moving on through there. Now, by the time we get through this evening and afternoon, here comes some more storms out of the Rockies into the Great Plains. We'll have to watch these. A couple could be strong to severe with some large hail and straight line winds, but all things considered, not a super big threat there into the overnight, but also, again, could continue to see showers and storms into the southeast and mid-Atlantic overnight. Do not rule it out. And then eventually we get into our Sunday, and Sunday looks a lot more widespread in the rain department, especially out into the plains from the Dakotas all the way down into Arkansas. Could see some showers and storms moving on through for your Sunday. Also pretty widespread up into the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania, and even into Eastern Canada. Montreal, Quebec could see some pretty good showers and storms into our Sunday afternoon here. And then again, more storms developing into the Carolinas likely in that afternoon thunderstorm fashion. And that will be a theme that unfortunately is not going to help these river totals go down. Look at this. This is Sunday afternoon and evening. Specifically, look at South Carolina and North Carolina and even into Southeast Virginia. Just storms kind of training over the same areas and bringing a lot more rainfall. And again, we really don't need it after Debbie just moved on through. All right, now that drier air will be on the way for some of us. This is this morning into this afternoon. Look at this pocket of beautiful air up into the Midwest. If you're watching from there or the Dakotas, let me know how it feels outside because I'll have to live through you because here in Charlotte, it feels like a wet blanket outside. So again, unfortunately, if we're down here into the southeast, especially the more coastal regions from Florida up through the I-95 corridor, not any relief in sight. Now, places like Nashville, Knoxville, Huntsville, Alabama, maybe even Little Rock and up through the Ohio River Valley, we're going to see some relief, and even into the Northeast. But for those areas like Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Greenville, North Carolina, Wilmington, the entire state of Florida, basically, Savannah, not really looking at any relief on the way. Now, I think as we get into the early part of this week, we'll try to see some of those dew points creep into nicer conditions into Virginia, maybe even northern North Carolina, Greensboro. It could feel a little bit nicer, and even into the mountains of North Carolina, we're going to see some nicer dew points. But all things considered, it's going to stay a bit of a muggy mess here for most of us into the southeast, while everyone else gets in on these nicer dew point values. And then by the time we get into next week, yeah, we're right back to the not so great muggy air forecast. All right, now with that kind of ring of fire setup I said that was going to try to work its way on back, we'll take a look at that here. And yeah, here we go. This is getting into this week. Just notice how we kind of get these plumes of moisture to kind of blow up and try to kind of work generally in this area. And that will be a theme this week. Again, not as severe as what we saw maybe a couple weeks ago, but we are going to see waves of rain trying to work on through parts of the central and even into the eastern part of the country. And then there's Ernesto, you'll notice there on the side of your screen. And again, a little too close for comfort. So we'll have to watch that as well, see how that affects the forecast. Or again, if it were to move further towards the United States, obviously that would be its own concern. So that is the latest there. And then the latest long-term forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. This gets us through the middle of the month. Below average temperatures expected in the mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast, or at least coastal sections of the Northeast. That will help to cool things down. Other than that, things look a little bit more above average into the southern plains. Again, that high pressure I showed you, going to keep those temperatures above normal. Rainfall-wise, looks drier into the southern plains where it's going to be warmer. Everyone else average to slightly above average rainfall outside of maybe the Thumb and UP of Michigan, and then up into northern Maine. So, nothing too crazy outside of the tropics right now, but there are going to be some active things that we continue to watch out for. And I'll keep you updated on for sure. So with all that said, again, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me on this Saturday. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.